Ms. Efron, is Mr. Cox out there?
Yes.
All right,
Oh, he's running to the minutes.
okay. I'm gonna start putting the clock on everybody. Well, Mr. Garahan, tell Mr. Cox to come in because the jury's in the hallway.
Oh, yeah.
All right, let's bring the jurors in.
All right, for the jury.
All right, everyone, please be seated. All right, defense, it's your witness.
Yes, Your Honor. And Dr. I believe you. Let me take your last name is Phillips. What's your last name?
Phillips.
Okay. And you're saying Dr. Phillips that testified earlier before we took the break.
That is correct.
Now, basically, Doctor, you testified reference to several photographs that's been admitted into evidence, correct?
2 photographs, correct.
And is it's fair to say that when those photographs were actually taken, you weren't present, correct?
As far as at the
At
autopsy,
Correct. When those photographs were actually taken, you weren't there, correct?
I don't recall being there.
do you recall ever personally examining the subject of those photographs?
The subject meaning,
The person in the photographs, I'm sorry.
again, I don't have any recollection of doing so. This was not, as already stated, my case.
Okay, all right. So it's fair to say that you wouldn't have taken any, say, measurements of anything, correct? On this subject.
On a case that isn't mine, again, I don't have any personal recollection of that. At most, if someone were to have a question, we're all in the building. People can come say, hey, what do you think of this? But obviously, I'm not making this report or performing this autopsy as the forensic pathologist.
I'll pass with this.
State,
Just one question, Judge. Dr. Phillips, what name is associated with the medical examiner office's records concerning this case?
I reject on the basis of would have to be hearsay.
sustained.
Nothing from the state.
All right, defense.
Nothing further, Judge.
All right, is this witness excused or subject for recall?
Subject recalled.
All right, the rule has been invoked. You're not allowed to discuss with your testimony with anyone except for attorneys for the state or the defense. Please make sure you're available if you're recalled. You may be excused. State, call your next witness.
State calls Gonzalez Salinas.
You raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you give will be the truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
All right, you can lower your hand. Make sure you keep your voice up for the jurors and for the court reporter. If you can state your name for the record, please.
Gonzalo Salinas.
All right, state.
Mr. Salinas, where do you currently work?
I work at the North American Development Bank.
And where is that located?
That's on St. Mary's and Market Street.
And how long have you worked there?
It's going to be 6 years in February.
And let's get right into it. On February 28th of 2022, were you working that day?
Yes, I was.
And where were you?
I was at my office on the third floor of the building by the window, working at my desk.
And did anything draw your attention to what was occurring outside of the building on that day?
Yeah, loud noises.
What type of loud noises?
They seemed to me at the time to be like blasts.
Now, when you heard these blasts, what did you do?
I immediately turned to my left to the window to see what was going on.
Now, describe this window. Where exactly was it in relation to you?
It was to my left.
And how large of a window are we talking here?
It's quite large.
Does it extend all the way to the floor?
Yes, it does.
And so would you have had a view of what was occurring outside?
Yes,
And how quickly after you heard these blasts did you turn your attention to that window?
a second, maybe less.
And did you see what happened when you looked outside the window?
I looked at the out to the street where I saw a man shooting another person.
And now you said, so there were two people that you were paying attention to.
Yes,
And let's talk about the person who was shooting. Where was he?
he was on the sidewalk, very close to the entrance of the building.
I'm throwing you with name marked to state exhibit number 110. You recognize this?
Yes,
What are you taking a look at?
I'm looking at the street right in front of our building.
And is that captured in a photograph?
Yes,
And does this photograph barely and accurately depict the view you would have had from your office whenever you heard those blasts?
it does.
Your Honor, State would offer state's exhibit number 110. Tendered to the fence.
All right, any objections?
Yes, cool approach.
Yes.
So you saw one of the men on the sidewalk. Where was the other man?
The other man, I believe, was, well, I know, he was to the left of the person shooting.
And Judge, I'm sorry, Jason Garen for the state. I just want to make sure I'm able to alter state exhibit number 110.
Yes,
Okay, thank you.
and that is by agreement with defense.
That's correct, Judge.
Permission to publish states 110.
That will be granted.
So I'm going to give you a pen. Would you be able to mark down, where did you see the man who was shooting whenever you looked out that window? Can you circle?
Just one moment. Could I have parties approach?
Here. Now, if you can, Gonzalo, if you can step down from the well and approach, I just want you to point out where you saw the man that was shooting.
Somewhere around.
I'm sorry, sir. I'm going to need you to speak up because the court reporter still has to
Yes,
hear.
somewhere within this point right here, somewhere around there, I believe.
And where was the man that was being shot?
Uh, Maybe here.
Here, if you could point. Okay, thank you, sir. You could go have a seat. So once you started paying attention to them, what happened from there?
I saw the gentleman to the right, on the right, shooting the other person.
And where was the other person? Was he standing?
No, he was on the ground.
And how many times did the man who was shooting fire at the person who was on the ground?
I think I think I saw him 2 to 3 times.
I'm gonna play what's already been entered in as state exhibit number 71. After the man shot, how would you describe his body language?
Was collected, calm.
What do you mean by that, collected and calm?
It didn't seem nervous, upset.
And do you know this person?
No,
And how long did you watch him there?
I don't know, but I'd say
Was it a long time? Was it a short time?
it was a short time.
While you were watching him, did the police arrive?
No,
I'm going to play state's exhibit number 71.
Who approached it?
Yes.
If I may, Judge,
Yes,
can I take the witness on board
for what purpose?
in terms of whether this is something that the witness seen prior to this?
All right, well, defense, you can make your objections. State, you may proceed.
So, Gonzalo, did you see everything that happened leading up to the shooting?
No,
So before the first shots, you did not pay attention to what was going on.
no,
But after those shots, you immediately turned to look outside your window and see what happened.
yes,
And based off of the photograph that was entered into exhibit, I believe it was 110. You said that that was the point of view that you had from your office.
yes,
Now, you could see everything that was happening on that street.
Objection leading.
Sustained.
Could you see everything that was happening on the street?
yes,
If you could look to your right, sir, there should be a screen right there. Now, Gonzalo, does this video match what you remember seeing when you looked out your window?
Objection leading.
Overruled.
You can answer the question, sir.
yes,
Pass the witness.
Defense.
Thank you, Judge. Now, sir, you testified that you were in your office, correct?
yes.
Okay. And what building is your office?
It's the building right in front of the incident place.
Okay. What's the name of the building?
Oh. I don't know what the name of the building is.
How long are you working?
Almost 6 years.
And you testified that what you saw corresponds with what you were looking at in State's exhibit, I think it's on the 71, correct?
Is that the picture that I,
Correct.
yes,
Okay, now your office, is your office in a building or is your office on a sidewalk?
it's on the building overlooking the sidewalk,
Correct, it's on the building, the top. How many floors up?
3 floors,
I'm sorry,
3,
3 floors up. So if you look at the picture that's on the screen right now, your vantage point is not that vantage point. Are you looking at the scene from that direction in your office up on the 3rd floor?
I'm not looking at that image I can't look at that image from my window.
Correct. So when the prosecutor asks you, does this comport with what you saw from your window? It can't be because you're looking above, and that's it appears to be kind of like a surface depiction, correct? You're looking above, you're looking down on it, correct?
Yes,
So you're not looking from this view. Look at you can see the picture on your monitor. You're not looking at it from that view, are you?
not from this view, no.
Not from that view. Now, this video that we're looking at, that you just testified about, have you ever seen it before?
Yeah.
Before today, before just now, have you ever seen it?
Yes,
Okay. Do you work for VIA bus system?
I don't know what that is.
The VIA, the bus system.
No.
Okay. So how many times prior to just now have you seen this video?
Once,
Once. And where was that?
it was at this building.
At this building. And you watched it with someone, correct?
Yes,
Okay. You remember who you watched it with?
yes,
Who was that?
Mr. Scobie, can't remember his last name just now.
Okay. Are they in a courtroom?
Yes,
Where are they seated?
right, it's the gentleman raising his hand.
Right to my right. At
Yes,
this table.
yes.
Okay. You got two gentlemen. Which one? Both of them or just one of them?
No, just the one that's raising his hand.
Oh, okay. Now, my personal witness says,
Yes.
now with
You want that?
yeah. Okay, now with state exhibit number 110, and you identified it, and I believe you testified that that's a view from your office, correct?
Yes,
All right, and these green things here, that's kind of on this picture. What are those?
trees,
Trees. Okay, so you're looking, are you looking kind of through those trees too to see you kind of have like a partial view of the sidewalk area, or is that you see the whole sidewalk area?
now or then,
Now, on the photograph.
now a partial area.
Okay, partially. Could you hear from your window in your office? Could you hear the sounds of anyone talking on the outside? Could you hear the conversations on the outside if there were any?
No,
No. And the distance between where you were standing in your office to the location that you're looking at down here that you pointed out, any idea how many feet we're talking about? Any idea?
100 feet.
Do you think it's as close as I am to you now, or it's further back? Your distance from where you're looking in your office to where the individuals were down on the sidewalk. As far as I am to you, or further back?
I think a little further back.
Go further back. All the way to the door, further back enough? No. More or less?
Probably more.
Maybe a little. What about here? Go further back?
No, I think that might be
That may be about it, maybe,
maybe,
okay. And your angle is not a flat, straight line angle, like I'm looking at you, you're looking down, correct?
yeah, but when I said the distance now, about what the distance was, I think I was also considering the angle.
The angle, okay. And are you looking? But you're actually looking down at that area, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Now, the two persons that you mentioned in your direct examination, somebody that was doing the shooting, and you testify about somebody that got shot, correct?
Correct.
All right. Do you know or do you recall whether either one of those persons were wearing a hat?
I'm sorry, could you?
A hat, were
hat.
either one of the persons wearing a hat?
Yes,
Okay. Which one was wearing a hat?
the one that made the shots.
Okay. And you're looking down at this person, correct?
Correct.
All right. Did the hat have a like a little bib on it, like something that covers, like for the sun, that cover the sun? Did it protrude out what from the face area? The hat. What type of hat was it? Like a cap?
Like a baseball cap, yeah.
Okay. All right. So were you able to see, and we're talking about person that you said did the shooting. From your angle, are you able to see it's that person's face?
No,
No. Okay. So you testified that that person was calm, correct?
correct.
Okay. Now, you make that determination by looking at the person's face, looking at the person's eyes. You said that person was calm. You make that determination by what? What way?
Body language.
Oh, body language. You said that the body language would tell you, is also the body language to tell you whether the person is nervous or not. Because you say the person didn't appear to be nervous.
Yes,
Okay, so the body language told you that too.
yes,
Okay. So you were close enough to see, when you say body language, to see whether the person's heart is racing. Are you that close to make that determination?
no,
No. Okay. You're close enough to hear the tone of the person's voice to give you some indication that the person's upset or whether the person is nervous. Can you tell by the sound of the person's voice?
no,
No. Did you hear the person saying?
no,
No. You testified that you watched the person for a short time, correct?
correct.
Was it 5 minutes or shorter?
Probably shorter,
Okay. About 4 minutes or shorter?
shorter,
Okay. What about 3 minutes or shorter?
probably shorter,
Okay. What about 2 minutes or shorter?
Probably shorter,
About 1 minute or short,
maybe a minute,
maybe a minute, could be less than a minute.
could be less.
I pass witness.
State.
Nothing from the state.
All right, is this witness excused or subject for recall?
Excuse.
Subject for recall.
All right, the rule has been invoked. That means that you're not allowed to discuss your testimony with anyone except for the state or the defense. Do you understand?
I don't understand.
All right, you may step down. State, call your next witness.
Yes, Your Honor, the state calls David Pendleton. Thank you, sir.
All right, could you raise your right hand for me, please? Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you give will be the truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
All right, you can lower your hand and have a seat. Make sure you speak up so the members of the jury can hear you in the court reporter.
Yes,
All
ma'am.
right. And if you'll state your name for the record and spell your last name.
My name is David Pendleton. It's Pendleton.
All right, state.
Thank you. I'm sorry, just can I have a moment?
Yes.
Uh, Mr. Pendleton, good morning or good afternoon, sorry. Can you briefly just introduce yourself to the jury and tell them what your occupation is?
Yes, sir. Once again, my name is David Pendleton. I'm a firearms examiner at the Bexar County Criminal Investigation Laboratory. Most people just call it the crime lab.
And you said you're a forensic scientist, I guess, is it focusing in firearms or ballistics or?
Yes, sir. I am technically a firearms examiner.
And what does that job entail?
On a daily basis, I'm going to examine evidence from scenes that have firearms evidence, whether it be an actual firearm. I'll also look at ammunition and ammunition components, the components being fired cartridge cases and bullets. And on a daily basis, I will attempt to determine if questioned cartridge cases and bullets were fired in one or two firearms.
And can you go over your educational background?
Yes, sir. As far as education, I have a bachelor's degree in criminal justice and a master's degree in justice policy, both from the University of Texas at San Antonio.
And do you have, how long have you been a forensic scientist?
Not all as a forensic scientist. I began as a technician for a couple of years, but approximately 17 and a half years.
And have you testified in different settings, as in courtrooms here in Bexar County?
Yes, sir.
And have you continued your education in this field of forensic science?
Yes, sir.
And so you're considered a forensic scientist in this field of firearms and ballistics?
Yes, sir. I'm also a member of the Association of Firearm and Toolmark Examiners, and I'm certified in the area of firearms identification by that organization.
And on May 26, 2022, did you make a firearms report?
Yes, sir.
And is there an SAPD number associated with that that report?
Yes, sir. There is.
And what is that?
220423551.
And is there a complainant associated with that report?
Yes, sir.
Who is that?
Objection, Judge. Be hearsay.
All right, that'll be overruled.
Thank you, Judge.
We
You can answer the
approach.
question.
We approach. Please, Judge.
Yes.
not going into the name, but you have a listed complainant in this case, is that right?
Yes, sir.
You also have a listed, I guess you would say suspect or defendant.
It's a suspect, yes, sir.
What is listed as a suspect?
Objection, we object again, Judge, based on this,
With regards to the name, that'll be sustained.
And so the police, this report was made for that particular SAPD number that you mentioned earlier, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And was there a certain detective associated with this case?
There is a detective on the report,
And who's that detective?
B. Ray, R-E-Y.
Thank you. And just generally, did you actually analyze two different handguns associated with this report?
Yes, sir.
I'm going to show you what's been marked state exhibit number 67 and its contents. When you look at that envelope and tell me if you recognize it at all,
Yes, sir, I do.
and why is that?
Each item of evidence or each case that comes into the laboratory is giving a unique number called a criminal investigation laboratory number. And it's associated with the agency number, which I had recited earlier. That number is on the packaging. It is also handwritten by me. The date that I opened the package, my initials, and the item number that I gave to this envelope or item of evidence.
Did you analyze the items in this envelope then?
Yes, sir.
I'm going to go ahead and bring them out of the envelope. And do you identify those items as something that you analyzed at the lab?
Yes, sir, I can.
And what type of weapon is this?
This is a 9mm Glock pistol.
And can you tell me what is the serial number associated with this weapon?
I'm sorry. BVDW234.
And that's associated with this weapon and is also the one that you analyzed in this case. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
It was in working order.
Yes, sir.
And how many live rounds were associated with this packaging?
I have notated there were 10 unfired cartridges with this particular item of evidence.
And with this, I guess the cartridges, 10 live rounds, you have what I believe, well, can you tell the jury what this is?
Yes, sir. That is a magazine, and it's suitable for use for the Glock pistol.
And just so if anybody doesn't understand, how do you load this? If you're gonna load, if this is with, what do you put in this magazine?
Unfired cartridges.
So that would be the fired cartridges that are in this bag?
Yes, sir.
And those would be put into the magazine?
Yes, sir.
And it seems like it has a spring?
Yes,
And so you load them in, is that correct?
correct.
And then where would you load this to make this a weapon live?
You would stick it into the grip of the pistol. If you don't mind. Basically insert it to the grip of the pistol, and under spring tension, the cartridges will be underneath the slide.
How many rounds does this particular magazine have?
The magazine holds 10 fight rounds.
10?
10.
And that's how many live rounds did you have on this one?
10.
Thank you. I'll also show you what's marked state exhibit number 68. Please look at that envelope and tell me if you can recognize it.
Yes, sir. I recognize it.
How did you recognize it, sir?
Once again, my handwritten CIO number, the date I opened the package, my initials, and item number that I gave the packaging.
And this is something that you analyzed for this case. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Your Honor, at this time, the state would move into exhibit numbers, state's exhibit number 68, move to enter into evidence. Tender to defense for me, Judge.
I take the witness on right eye.
Yes.
I need the coach.
Yes.
Yeah. Just look at State's Exhibit number 68.
Yes, sir.
And do you recognize all the writing on it?
Most of it,
Most of it, not all.
not all of this.
Some of the writing is yours, correct?
Yes,
And some of the writing is not.
correct, sir.
The writing here, is that your writing in that green?
On the yellows, greenish yellow sticker, so that is not mine. That is more likely SAPD's knifing.
This writing to the side.
There's the description of magazine and live rounds, things of that nature, handwritten writing. That is not my writing. It's more than likely.
Who approach?
Yes. All right, State's Exhibit number 68 is admitted.
Contents of state exhibit number 68. 68A, state exhibit. Can you tell the jury what that is?
This is a 9mm Canik pistol.
And is that the same Canik pistol that you analyzed for this firearms report?
Yes, sir, it is.
And how do you know that?
A number of ways. One is which you can't see it, but I scribed inside the magwell, the CIO number that I spoke of, my initials and the item number. And also it corresponds to the serial number that is on my report and in my notes.
And because for this case, you analyzed this 68A and then also 68B. Can you tell me, one, what is contained in that envelope?
It should be a magazine for the pistol.
Can you go ahead and open that, please, for and if you don't mind, take the contents out. And can you tell the jury what that is?
Yes, this is the magazine that was submitted and it's suitable for use with the pistol.
And again, just as before, can you take this this weapon, this handgun, and tell the jury how you would, one, load the magazine, and then also load the gun to make it live?
First, obviously, you would load the magazine with unfired cartridges. They go under spring tension and they're caught by these two lips because they're cylindrical. Then once they're fully loaded, and this magazine would hold 18 cartridges, you insert it to the pistol, and then from that point, you're ready to actually pull the slide back to load it and fire it.
Don't mind. State exhibit number 68C. Please just tell me what is in that envelope.
The unfired 9mm caliber cartridge, excuse me.
And is that cartridge, could that be loaded into this magazine to be loaded into this gun?
Yes, sir.
And it looked like you have 68C and then 68D. And I guess there's only one, so go ahead and, if you don't mind, open up 68D. And is that another live round that could be loaded in this magazine to be loaded into this gun?
Yes, sir.
And I think you stated in previous testimony that this magazine holds 18 rounds.
Yes, sir.
And so if we have 2 rounds here that are live, you could have loaded an additional 16 rounds in here.
Yes.
Now, you also analyze shell casings associated with this case.
Yes, sir. I did.
Can you tell the jury how many shell casings you analyzed?
16 fired cartridge cases.
All right. I want to show you what's been marked on state exhibit number 49. Can you please identify that for me, if you can?
I can, yes, sir.
And what is that?
It's an envelope that was submitted to the lab with the cartridge cases inside. And I recognize it once again, the CIO number, date, my initial, and the item number that I assigned.
All right. So that's associated with this case. I laid out in front of you state exhibit number 50 through 65. That would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 small envelopes. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And I'm going to give you what's been marked state exhibit number 50. Can you tell me what that is?
It is a fired 9mm caliber cartridge case.
And do you recognize any markings on that packaging?
Yes, sir, I do.
And what is that? What are those markings that you ever made that you recognize?
Once again, CIO number, date, initials, item number that I specifically assigned this because these will have individual numbers. And then there's also my initials of the date that I sealed the packaging when I was completed with my analysis.
And I'm going to go ahead and ask you to just look at each of these packages, 51 through 65. And then I'm going to ask you some questions about those. Can you review those? And Judge, can we just have a minute so you can review
Yes.
that? Thanks.
And defense, if you need to move so you can see, you're more than welcome to do so.
Thank you.
Now, the additional, state exhibit number 50, you already reviewed and said that you actually analyzed that shell casing. What about state exhibit number 51 through 65? Did you recognize the packaging of each of those?
Yes, sir, I did.
And how did you recognize those?
The same information, CIO, date, initial, item number.
And so those are markings that you made when you analyzed these shell casings?
Yes, sir.
And in each of these packagings, 51 through 65, including 50, are those all containing shell casings that you analyzed for this case?
Yes, sir.
And after analyzing all these shell casings, do these shell casings have
And
something?
state, I'm sorry, state, if you could slow down.
Sorry.
Okay.
Do these shell casings, exhibit number 50 through 65, do they have anything similar to them that you analyzed?
Yes, sir.
And what is that similarity?
Well, in the process, I need to explain what class characteristics and individual characteristics are. When we do an analysis of a firearm, we actually have a firearm. It's actually what we would prefer to have. We're actually going to analyze the firearm. We're going to go through a series of checklists to make sure that it's safe to fire, document it, and then we're actually going to fire the weapon, generally in the range or in the water tank. We're going to collect bullets, and we're going to collect cartridge cases that were fired from the weapon or expelled. And these are what we call our known samples. They're called knowns. We know where they came from. They came from the firearm. From that point, I would do a comparison using what we call a comparison microscope, which is essentially two separate microscopes that I can view at the same time through one set of eyepieces. So I will compare these two tests together, and I will look for individual markings. We have class characteristics, which are very general in nature. These are the caliber, the shape of the firing pin, is it circular, is it rectangular, the caliber of a bullet, the number of landing grooves on a bullet. Those are class characteristics. But the individual characteristics are markings left from the firing of the weapon that are left on the items of evidence, and they can be reproduced against each other using the microscope. Once I find markings that are reproducing, then I will look to see if there are those same markings or on any questioned evidence, which is the individual markings.
Thank you for explaining that, because it sort of leads to my next question. You're able to analyze all these, and did you determine if they had been fired from a certain weapon?
Yes, sir.
And what weapon were these shell casings fired from?
The Canic pistol, whatever exhibit number is.
You pointed to state exhibit number 68A, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And this is the one of the firearms you analyzed in your firearms report, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And so these 16 shell casings, you determined fired from here.
Correct.
And then you also said you had 2 live rounds, is that right?
Yes, sir.
Or was the ammunition with the 2 live rounds and all the shell casings, were those the same?
The same manufacturer
Yes.
caliber, yes. If I can look at my note.
Yeah, if you don't mind, I really think the bailiff should clear the weapon before it's handled any further.
All right,
I have it right
the
here.
weapon is safe.
Sit tight.
It's not, it's
Yes.
safe.
I also
You're saying
checked
it's
it.
the same from yesterday, right? But it never,
I'll bring it to you.
I don't want it. I want the
I'm just
bailiff
gonna
to
show it to
clear
you.
it.
I'm gonna hold.
I want the bailiff to clear it.
It can't be clear because there's a zip tie to it.
All right, the weapon is, ladies and gentlemen, the weapon is zip tied.
Oh, sorry. And I also checked it when I picked it up.
Okay. I think the question was, were these the same manufacturer, I guess,
The same manufacturer, the same caliber, all of them. And all but 3 were the same brand.
3, you mean the 2 live rounds and the
Yes.
16 shell casings?
Yes, sir.
And so you could just, I mean, tell me that, tell the jury this, one, can you, I think you explained it, but I just want to clarify right now, that you're able to say that these shell casings were fired and ejected from this actual weapon.
Yes, sir.
We'll pass the witness, Your Honor.
Defense,
If we could have
Just
a-
one moment.
Could print one out. Could you just give me one moment? I need to print out.
Yes. Yeah. Right.
My inquiry now doesn't make.
Yes, you may
Okay.
inquire.
Now, sir, you testified that you did testing on the item, say 50 to 65, showcasing. You did testing on all the items that you testified to thus far this afternoon, correct?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Now, you say when you're analyzing or testing, you're going to test the firearm, or you're going to examine the firearm. Do you identify in terms of on that firearm do you look for any particular markings on that firearm that helps you in your further determination as to whether a bullet was fired from that firearm?
Yes, sir, we did.
Okay. And what are your identifiers in terms of the firearm? What do you look for on the firearm to help you later with that identification?
As I had explained earlier, when we're looking at our test, we're looking for reproducing marks that we know are happening because of the firing process, not necessarily because of the manufacture of the cartridges. In other words, these marks aren't there prior to firing. Based on what we know of how a firearm works and what areas will leave markings, we're going to look for markings that are both impressed. That's just from direct pressure of contact, a negative impression. And then we're going to look for areas where the cartridge case is actually sliding through the weapon. It'll scrape against certain edges of the firearm. That's both for cartridge cases and bullets. So those markings that when they're reproducing, they can then be demonstrated through the known tests. Once we identify those reproducing marks, that's what we're going to look for.
Okay. So in this case, you would, since you have the ability to have would you believe to be the weapon that fired the bullets, you're going to have some like a controlled shooting where the gun is fired, you actually have the shell casing and you use that shell casing to compare it to other shell casing, correct?
Yes, sir, in two respects. The first respect is that it's true. I have the weapon, but I don't necessarily know that the questioned evidence was fired in that weapon. First, we'll look at those class characteristics. They could be completely different. And if they are, I can stop my examination right there. But if the class characteristics are similar, that's when we look for the individual characteristics. But yes, we have both the firearm and then any questioned evidence to be examined together.
Okay. So it's fair to say that a firearm, like the one you examined, those firearms are mass produced, correct?
Oh, yes, sir.
So you have a machine that could produce, say, perhaps if they wanted to, 1,000 of the same weapon from the same machine in a day, correct?
Yes, sir. And that's also when class characteristics fall into place, because certain weapons will have similar, obviously, class characteristics, because I mentioned before, the shape of the firing pin is the same. There are certain, the aperture, which is the hole that the firing pin sticks out of, that's going to leave marks. It may be differently shaped. And so if you make firearms consecutively one after the other, they're going to have similar class characteristics, even further down to what we call subclass. But the individual characteristics, because the machine is constantly changing the metals every time it's getting used. I always use the analogy, if you ever think of a grinding wheel, you see the little sparks flying off of it. Those are pieces of metal, and you can't reproduce that by machine. It's a random occurrence. But yes, these are produced in mass production, one after the other consecutively, and can be quite a few.
And if, say, a firearm is used over a period of time, by firing that firearm over a period of time, does that change the signature in terms of what you may see in a microscope if you enlarge?
Yes, sir. Although it's been shown to be very slight, but using the firearm over a period of time will, especially with accidental problems with the weapon, dirt, things of that nature, can change the appearance of the markings, but it will be very slight.
So in terms of your testing, you could determine if a certain firearm fired a certain, using with a certain shell casing, you can make that determination, even if there was 1,000 of those things made and one was made right after the other. It still wouldn't be the same. Is that what you're telling us? The markings would be that much different?
Yes, sir. And to emphasize the point, we've done multiple studies where we've done examinations of barrels or slides that were consecutively made, like literally made one after the other. And then bullets and cartridge cases were fired out of these weapons, and then they were sent to examiners, and examiners were able to determine which cartridge cases and bullets came from which weapon. So, yes, sir.
Okay. So are you able to determine when, can you date these things to say, well, if you fire a weapon today, I will gun, fired a gun, the same gun, and got a shell casing today, got a shell casing a year from now, would you be able to tell which one was fired first? Or you don't, that's not a part of the equation. You can't tell in terms of dates and time, anything like that. Is that?
Yes, I can identify whether they were fired from the weapon, but as far as the specific time or even who fired a weapon, that's beyond the scope of my analysis.
And I believe your testimony is that you use some type of comparison microscope.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And do you make your decision while you're looking through the microscope, or do you take photographs of what you're seeing, then study the photographs to make the decision?
No, we'll make our determination through the microscope itself. The reason being is a microscope, from what I can see with my eye, is a three-dimensional image. So I can have a better understanding of the lighting angles and things of that nature. We will take a photo just for reference purposes to say, oh yes, this is where I was looking at. And in some cases you can identify using the photos, but that is not a standard practice within the scientific community. So I will go ahead and make my judgment based on what I see under the microscope. Then as a quality control, a second examiner with equal knowledge or training will come behind me and look at the same evidence and see if they come to the same conclusion that I made. After that, then yes, we will photograph it, but mainly just for documentation purposes.
Okay, so when you did your investigation of these items, someone else looked at it for quality control.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And would that person normally make a report on their finding?
No, sir, that's not part of the accreditation requirements. No, sir.
Okay. Do you ever have situations where you all disagree?
There are, but they're usually not that many. Usually a disagreement is on the level of significance you might want to place on some markings. There's only three conclusions we can come to: an identification, yes, it was fired in this weapon; an exclusion, no, this is absolutely no way it was fired in this weapon; or three is inconclusive, which is for some reason the markings just aren't that great. They didn't produce well. That happens with some firearms. So you can't say it was an elimination because all the class characteristics are the same, but you can't identify it because there's not enough individual characteristics. So in that case, it would be an inconclusive. And generally, if there is a disagreement, it is generally on, should we say this is identification or exclusion or inconclusive?
Now, in your investigation and your examination in this case, who's your quality control person, you recall?
We have a quality control manager, a lady by the name of Christy Vachon. And as far as the review of this case was done by my supervisor, Mr. Ed Wallace.
We'll pass this.
State.
The Glock that you saw earlier, I think it's listed as state exhibit number 67. And mechanic. What caliber are each of these?
They're both 9mm.
Did the Glock shoot these shell casings?
No, sir.
Mechanic shoot these shell casings?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. No further questions.
Defense.
No further questions.
All right, is this witness excused or subject for recall?
Excused from the statement.
Subject.
All right, the rule has been invoked. That means that you're not allowed to discuss your testimony with anyone. The only persons you're allowed to speak to are attorneys for the state of the defense. Do you understand?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, you may step down.
Thank you, Your Honor.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to give us a 10-minute break so the court reporter can stretch her fingers a little bit. So we're going to be back at 3. Remember my previous instructions. Everything that you need to know about this case is to come from inside the courtroom. You are not allowed to begin deliberation internally or with each other. Does everyone understand? All right, everyone, please rise for the jurors. Oh, everything's going great. But yeah, don't be a stranger. All right, thank you. All right, we're ready.
Okay,
All right, to the jury.
Yes, thank you. All right, everyone, please be seated. State, call your next witness.
State John Hillary to the stand.
Yes, sir.
All right, could you raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you give will be the truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I swear.
All right, you can lower your hand. Make sure you keep your voice up for the members of the jury and the court reporter. If you could state your name and spell your last name, please.
Yes, Your Honor. It's John Hilliard, Hilliard.
State.
Now. Dr. Hillary, well, who do you currently work for?
The San Antonio Police Department.
And what do you do for SAP?
I'm on the crime scene unit for the police department.
And do you have an official title?
Detective is my rank or title.
Do you also, are you a crime scene investigator?
Yes, sir.
And what type of training did you receive to become a crime scene investigator?
Digital photography, videography, latent prints, evidence collection of different types, whether it's picking it up or testing like gunshot residue, narcotics, presumptive narcotics tests.
So can you tell me what's the difference between a crime scene investigator and a UEDI?
The UEDs have much of the same duties, but they don't typically take lead on serious crimes, such as aggravated assaults with serious injuries, murders, rapes, aggravated robberies with serious injuries, things like that. It's normally left to the CSI office to do.
And were you working on February 28th, 2022?
Yes, sir.
And were you called out to take a gunshot residue test on someone?
Yes, I was.
Where did you go?
To SAMC or 3551 Roger Brook on Fort Sam.
And why were you called out there?
I was called out to take photographs of a person involved in a shooting and also to do a gunshot residue test on their hands.
And what goes into doing a gunshot residue test?
We have a sealed kit that we open once we're going to do the test. It comes with a pair of latex gloves, 2 vials, 1 for each hand, and then an evidence sticker, as well as a questionnaire to ask the victim if you can, or the person getting the test.
And what SAPD number was this GSR associated with?
As far as the case number,
Yes, sir.
2204-2351.
And the person that you performed the gunshot residue test on, were they alive at the time?
No, sir.
So you weren't, you obviously were unable to ask them these questions.
Yes, sir.
What was the name of the person you took the gunshot residue test from?
objection, that come from hearsay, Judge, if the witness doesn't have personal knowledge.
All right, if you'll lay the foundation to his knowledge.
So in order to do the gunshot residue test, can you leave the name blank
Yes, we can.
if they're unidentified?
Yes, sir.
But in this occasion, were they identified to you?
Yes, sir.
By whom?
I do not recall that. It might have actually been on the key card, or the license may have been with the person at the time.
So you can't identify the person, but you can at least, for the record, and to make sure that the evidence, the chain of custody is still together, you can say, this is who I took the gunshot residue test from.
Correct.
And who is that person?
Objection, same objection, Judge, hearsay, then I'll write a confrontation.
All right. State, you want to lay the foundation?
In order to make sure that the gunshot residue test stays consistent throughout the testing process, is it important to get their name?
Yes,
And in this occasion, did you get their name?
I did.
And so you have personal knowledge of the name of the individual that you took the gunshot residue test from.
Same objection, Judge.
All right, he hasn't answered the question yet.
Can you answer that question, sir?
Yes, sir. Yes,
So you had personal knowledge of their name.
yes.
What was their name?
Objection,
All right.
Judge. Still,
That'll be, can I have parties approach?
So you were able to take the gunshot residue test from the complainant, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And what goes into conducting the gunshot residue test?
So first we open the sealed container and then we put on the gloves that specifically come with this. And there are two different vials, one for the right hand, one for the left hand. It's a plastic vial with a stopper. We open the stopper and depending on which hand it is, part of the stopper has a little sticky portion that you just dab on the hands, like in this area here, over the fingers.
And do you do that for each hand?
Yes, sir.
And once you've completed this test, what do you do?
They're closed back up, sealed in the bag and put in as evidence. And to my knowledge, the property room sends them off to Bear County Lab. Yes, sir.
What do I have in my, well, I'm gonna show you what's gonna be marked as State's Exhibit 111. What is this?
That is a gunshot residue test.
And was this the gunshot residue test that you collected?
Yes, sir.
And this is the container with the gunshot residue test inside.
Yes, sir.
And how do you know that this was the same container that you handled?
It's sealed with evidence markers or evidence tape and my initials.
And you didn't write all the markings that are on this, did you?
No, I did not.
But you recognize your own signature on this packaging.
Yes, sir.
And as far as you can tell, other than the markings that were added on after you, it's the same packaging, correct?
Yes, sir.
You open up State's Exhibit 111. And what is inside State's Exhibit number 111?
The two vials that come with the GSR kit.
And can you take them out?
Yes, sir.
And do you recognize these vials?
Yes.
And how do you recognize them?
They were in here and they're marked left hand, right hand.
And are these the same vials that you took on February 28th, 2022?
Yes,
Your Honor, state would offer the contents of state's exhibit number 111.
All right. Do you want to mark?
We can mark the individual vials. They are very small though, Judge. Yep, and. But this is state's exhibit number 112. You put that on the right, and 113 on the left. So is that the right?
correct.
Thank you.
All right, and so you're offering States Exhibit 112 and 113?
Yes, Judge.
Defense, any objections to 112, 113?
I'll approach it.
Yes.
Now, so this will come back.
We'll approach it.
Yes.
Now, Detective Hilliard, you also took photos at the hospital, correct?
Yes, sir.
And what did you take photographs of?
I took photos of a deceased person, including apparent injuries to their body,
And why did you take these photographs?
to document the actual injuries as they were seen shortly after.
Objection relevancy, and it would be speculation on this witness unless they're gonna lay the foundation from him for this witness being a doctor, medical examiner in terms of injuries, and what type and what they show.
All right, that objection will be overruled.
So you was put in mark exhibit number 114 and 115. Do you recognize these?
Yes, sir.
And what are they photos of?
They're photos of a deceased person laying in a hospital bed.
And are these, is this the same person that you took the gunshot residue from?
Yes, sir.
And have these images been altered in any way?
Not to my knowledge, no.
Your Honor, state would offer states exhibit number 114 and 115.
Defense, any objection?
I'll approach them.
Yes.
reproach bench.
Yes.
Pathologist.
All right, defense.
Officer, did you create a report?
Yes, sir, I did.
Okay. Do you have it with you?
I do not.
Did you review it
I reviewed it, I believe, last week, sir.
in preparation for your testimony?
Yes, sir.
And so you, if I may judge,
Yes.
you responded to location and you testified that you did the gunshot residue testing, right?
Yes, sir.
To take samples.
Yes, sir.
And how long were you at that location?
I don't recall exactly, sir.
And I believe your testimony is that you took the samples and you placed them in containers, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And those containers were to be sent to a lab, correct?
That's my understanding. Yes, sir.
All right, I'll pass with you.
All right, state.
Oh, state,
All right, is this witness excused or subject for recall?
excuse from the state.
Subject.
All right, the rule has been invoked. What that means is you're only allowed to speak to the attorneys for the state of the defense. Do you understand?
Yes, I do, Your Honor.
All right, you may step down. Just make sure you're available if you are recalled.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, state, call your next witness.
State calls Roberto Orozco.
Just give us a moment. They're exchanging the evidence.
Yes, Your Honor.
Don, are you ready to proceed? Can you raise your right hand for me? Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you give will be the truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, you can lower your hand. Make sure you keep your voice up so that members of the jury and the court reporter can hear. And if you could state your name for the record and spell your last name, please.
My full name is Roberto Nicholas Orozco, last name. Do I need to spell my first name as well?
No, just the last name.
Orozco.
All right, state.
Thank you, Your Honor. Orozco, I'm going to show you this state exhibit number 75. Can you identify that?
No, yes, sir. It looks like a medical examining number.
Okay. Do you know who is in that picture?
Yes, sir, I do.
Who is in that picture?
It's my younger brother, Isaiah Ryan Orozco.
Pass the witness.
Defense.
We approach briefly.
Yes. presence. It should take 10 to 15 minutes. So I will bring you back in at 4 o'clock at the latest. Remember my previous instructions, okay? Everyone, please rise. We're ready.
All right, for the jury.
All right, everyone, please be seated. All right, defense, it's your witness.
Okay, thank you, sir. Okay, sir, I think when we left, off, you, one of your answers was that the young person that you identified was your younger brother, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And your testimony, do you presently live prior to his death? Did you live with him?
No, sir.
You lived out of town, or
Yes, sir.
you still live in San Antonio now?
No, sir.
Do you know whether your brother owned property on the 200 block of South St. Mary? Do you know where that's at? 200 block of
That's
South
right.
St. Mary?
Literally right around the corner, I believe.
Correct.
Yeah, he didn't own, but he did rent.
Okay, but in that area, he didn't own the block. Or did or do you know? Do you?
No,
No. Did you ever know him to either speak erratically or nonsensical or talk nonsensical?
like you mean like crazy? No.
Do you know whether he was known to carry a handgun with him?
As far as him owning a firearm, he did tell me that he did legally purchase it from the store, so I did have knowledge of that.
All right. You don't know which store he purchased from, or do you?
Northeast Gun Club. And I do have the paperwork for that as well.
I'm sorry.
I do have this paperwork for that
Do
as
you have
well.
it perfect work?
Yes, sir, because I retrieved it from his apartment.
Okay. Do you have it with you now?
No, sir, it's at my house.
You provide it?
Oh, yes, sir, I can.
I'll pass witness.
No further questions from the
All right, is this witness excused?
No, Your Honor, we're gonna like to have him on recall and for him to provide us a copy of the paperwork that he mentioned. So if I just want to put the court on notice of that, but we may call him back. Judge.
All right.
Maybe approach.
Yes. All right, Mr. Orozco. The rule hasn't been invoked. You're not allowed to discuss your testimony with anyone except for attorneys for the state or the defense. The defense has no objection to your being removed from the rule to be allowed to be in the courtroom. But that means that you are not to discuss your testimony with anyone in this courtroom other than attorneys for the state or the defense. And I've already discussed with you the repercussions if you were to disobey the court's rule, correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, you may step down.
Thank you.
State, call your next witness.
State calls Leslie Show.
All right, if you'll take your seat. Can you raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you give will be the truth and nothing but the truth so help you God?
I do.
All right, you can lower your hand, take your seat, make sure your voice is up so the jurors can hear and the court reporter can hear. And if you'll state your name for the record and spell your last name.
My name is Leslie Chapey. It is spelled Leslie. The last name is Tschoepe.
Right, state.
Leslie, who do you currently work for?
I am employed at the Bexar County Criminal Investigation Laboratory.
And what do you do for the Bexar County Criminal Investigation Laboratory?
I am a forensic scientist in the chemistry discipline.
And how long have you worked for the Bexar County? And I'm just going to refer to it as the Bexar County Crime Lab.
Okay.
How long have you worked for them?
Since January of 2019.
And what type of education and training do you need to become a forensic scientist?
I have a bachelor's degree of science in chemistry from Baylor University and a master's of science in forensic science from Sam Houston State University. Upon being hired, I completed on-the-job training.
And what specific area are you focused in?
I work in both drug identification as well as primer gunshot residue analysis.
And primer gunshot residue analysis, what does that mean?
Primer gunshot residue analysis is testing for the presence of primer gunshot residue on surfaces that are sampled, such as hands, clothing, and any other kind of surface.
So you analyze the actual tests that are done out in the field.
Correct.
And do you actually conduct these tests yourself? Not the analysis, but the initial GSR testing?
Do you mean the sampling?
Yes.
No, I do not.
And so what is your role?
I take, when the agencies submit the evidence, I test the submitted evidence from the law enforcement agencies.
And how exactly do you test them?
Can I use a demonstrative aid?
Yes, ma'am.
So what I test is a gunshot residue analysis kit is typically what is submitted. And inside of those kits, there are either 2 to 4 of these sampling devices or stubs. And inside and on these stubs, there is a round disc that has a double-sided carbon sticky tape. And this round disc is what is tested. And I use an instrument called the scanning electron microscope with an energy dispersive X-ray detector, or SEM-EDX for short.
And what exactly are you looking for?
I am looking for particles that contain any combination of lead, barium, or antimony.
And how would those particles end up on that GSR kit that you analyze?
The most common ways are from discharging a firearm, handling a discharged firearm, or being in close proximity to a discharging firearm.
And how would those chemicals, I guess, get on a surface due to the discharging of a firearm?
Can I use another demonstrative aid?
Of course.
So when on a firearm, when the trigger gets pulled, the firing pin will strike this silver part, which is the primer cap. And this primer cap contains shock sensitive chemicals. And upon that impact, it causes the gunpowder to then ignite and then push the barrel down push the bullet down the barrel, excuse me. But what I'm focused on is the metals that are inside of this primer cap. Upon that explosion that happens inside, there's a lot of heat and pressure. And so the metals that are inside that primer cap get vaporized from all of that. And then they will escape from the weapon from any hole, such as the end of the barrel. And what they will do is they will exit any non-gas type hole in the firearm and cool and condense and form particles that contain metals. And then they will float around and then be acted upon from environmental factors and land on surfaces. A good example is when LeBron James, before a basketball game, would throw chalk up in the air. And you see that cloud of chalk and how it has forces acting upon it, and it will eventually fall and land on different surfaces. GSR is very similar, except they're very tiny and you can't see them, but it acts similarly where it's like a cloud and it will fall on these surfaces. And I'm looking for these particles that contain lead, barium, and antimony, or a combination of them.
And what does it mean when those chemicals are found on a surface?
When it's found on a surface, it means the most likely reason is, say, if it's near a discharging firearm, or if it's on hands of a person that they discharged a firearm or handled a discharging firearm, or were in close proximity to a discharging firearm.
Are you able to say specifically from your testing that that's the case?
I cannot determine which way GSR is deposited on a surface, but those are the most likely reasons.
And did you conduct GSR testing in this case that you're here today for?
Yes, I did.
Under what CIL case number did you test these items?
May I refer to my report?
Yes, ma'am.
The CIL number for this case is 22-01433.
And does that correspond to a San Antonio Police Department case number?
Yes.
What San Antonio Police Department case number does it correspond to?
220-42351.
And why is it important to have both of those numbers on both your reports and everything that you're testing in connection with the SAPD case number?
So when a law enforcement agency drops off evidence to the laboratory, it is given a unique number called a CIL, or Criminal Investigation Laboratory Number. That number is unique to that specific agency number. So there will never be another CIL number that is the same because it is unique to that agency number.
And how many GSR kits did you test?
In this case, there were 2.
I'm going to show you what's in the previously marked state exhibit number 111. Do you recognize it?
Yes, I do.
What is that?
This is the outer envelope of a gunshot residue analysis kit.
And how do you recognize it?
By my markings such as the CIL number, the date, the item number, and my initials.
And why would you make sure to mark these?
These are marked so that we can make sure that we are working the items in the correct order, and we can keep up with what kit belongs to who and which item of evidence.
So I'm also going to show you, Your Honor, state would offer states exhibit number 111 into evidence.
Defense,
I'm sorry,
any objection?
to 111.
Yes.
Objection.
All right, State's Exhibit number 111 is admitted without objection.
And so who was this GSR kit taken from?
From Isaiah Orozco.
And I'm showing you what's been marked as states exhibit number 112 and 113. Do you recognize these?
Yes, I do.
What do you recognize them as?
On here, I have the first initial of the first name and the last name, and the CIL number, date, and my initials on both sampling devices.
So these would have been the gunshot residue kit that you would have tested for this case.
Correct.
I'm gonna show you what's remarked as state's exhibit number 69. Do you recognize it?
Yes, I do.
What is it?
This is an outer envelope of a kit for the same case
And how do you recognize it?
by the same markings as previously stated.
So you marked this previously.
Correct.
And has the packaging been altered in any way?
No, it has not.
Your Honor, state would offer state's exhibit number 69 into evidence.
Approach.
Yes.
We need a approach.
I'm sorry, Mr.
Sorry.
Exhibit number 69 is admitted.
Contents also good or?
He's offering state's exhibit number 69, the envelope. He hasn't opened to see what the contents are and whether or not he's asking that the contents of 69 be admitted.
Now, Leslie, can you open up state's exhibit number 69?
Yes.
Quickly, so again, state's exhibit number 69, does it have the same CIL number corresponding to this case?
Yes, it does.
And does it have the same SAPD number corresponding to this case?
Yes, it does.
And can you please take out what's in state's exhibit number 69? What is it?
This is a gunshot residue collection kit.
And do you recognize it?
Yes, I do.
How do you recognize it?
By my markings of the CIL number, date, and my initials, as well as the item number.
And let's move on to that as state exhibit number 114. So you've made markings on this before.
Correct.
Your Honor, state would offer state exhibit number 114 into evidence.
To approach.
Yes. Yes. The item listed is actually states exhibit.
Yes. Take it out.
Yes, if you could. And what was inside?
Two sampling devices that say they were collected from the right hand and the left hand.
Okay, and does that have any other writings on it?
Yes, it has my markings of the first initial and middle name initial as well as the last name for who this kit belongs to, the CIL number, the date, and my initials.
And does that CIL number match the CIL number in this case?
Yes, it did.
Now let's mark these as states exhibit number 117 and 118. And I'm going to place 117 on what's marked as the right hand. And then if you could place 118 on what's been marked as the left hand. Your Honor, state what offer seeks exhibit number 117 and 118.
You could approach again.
Yes.
You could approach the bench again.
Yes.
Now, Leslie, did you conduct testing on these two tests? Yes.
Yes, I did.
So let's start with what's in State's Exhibit number 111 in regards to Isaiah Roscoe. What did you find?
No microscopic particles containing any combination of lead, barium, or antimony were detected on the right hand or left hand of Isaiah Roscoe.
And what does that mean?
It is indeterminate, if Isaiah Roscoe discharged a firearm, handled a discharged firearm, or was in close proximity to a discharging firearm.
So then let's go into the other testing that you conducted. Who was that done on?
That was conducted on Joseph Dale Harris.
And what did your testing find?
7 microscopic particles containing lead, barium, and antimony, and 3 microscopic particles containing lead and antimony were detected on the right hand of Joseph Harris, and 3 microscopic particles containing lead, barium, and antimony, 1 microscopic particle containing barium and antimony, and 2 microscopic particles containing lead and antimony were detected on the left hand of Joseph Harris.
And what does that mean?
Based on the morphology and elemental composition of these particles, Joseph Harris may have discharged a firearm, handled a discharged firearm, or was in close proximity to a discharging firearm.
Ask the witness.
Defense.
Yes. And your bachelor's, your undergrad degree was in chemistry?
Correct.
Now, all right, been a long time, but there's what they call a periodic chart, correct?
A periodic table, correct.
Tape that gives you all the elements.
Correct.
All right, and these elements on that table.
Correct.
All right, now, in being a chemist, you would have some, I guess, expert knowledge in terms of, say, if I wanted to get a determination how much lead is in regular soil that you may find, say, in a nursery or on the ground somewhere. Is it lead in the soil to any degree?
That is outside of my area of expertise.
Okay. And lead is found in combination of other materials, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Can you give us some examples of what we may find lead in?
Off of the top of my head, I'm sorry, I can't think of any. Again, my expertise is in primer gunshot residue analysis.
Okay. And the second element you said was what?
There's antimony.
Antimony. In terms of whether we find that in normal everyday either products or soil or anything like that, do you have any information, any knowledge, is that found in our environment, and if so, where?
Again, that is outside of my area of expertise.
Okay, and that last item was what?
Barium.
Okay. Where that's found in our environment, whether it's soil or machinery, do you have any idea of how that impacts our everyday living and where we will find those items?
No, that is outside of my area of expertise.
So what happens in this case is that you get a sample that's as you certify, that sample is sent to you, correct?
Correct.
And do you personally do any testing? When I say personal, I'm not talking about using a machine or some type of microscope or something that analyzes. Do you actually do anything like pouring a chemical on another chemical to see whether you get a reaction? Do you do anything like that in the test?
I do not pour chemicals on the sampling devices. The only procedure that we do is preparation for these samples, just to maintain the life and the filament of our instrument. I put these samples on what is called a sputter coater. And this is just to put a thin layer of carbon on top of the samples. And carbon does not interfere with where lead, barium, or antimony, where their electron or their X-ray energies come off on a spectra. So there is no interference with carbon. And this is just to kind of save from how samples can be very dirty and can cause things to gunk up essentially an instrument. And so it's just to save and kind of make the samples not cause issues for the instrument.
So when this testing is occurring, does that testing is a process to identify something like, say, the electron of a substance?
I am identifying the X-ray energies of the particles that are found.
And when I say that, is the electron a part of that process, or that has nothing to do with it?
The electrons are made up of the beam, so I can kind of go through the process a little bit more in depth. So at the instrument that we use, the scanning electron microscope with an energy dispersive X-ray detector is essentially, is a high-powered microscope. And this microscope at the top, it has a column, and at the top of this column is a filament. And this filament looks like the inside of an incandescent light bulb. And that filament has a light or current applied to it, and it forms a beam. And this beam travels through the column and is impacted with electrons, and it forms a refined beam that scans the surface of the stub or the sampling device. And as it scans the surface of the stub or sampling device, when it comes in contact with a particle, that particle will give off X-ray energies. And those X-ray energies for each element are unique to that element. And so it will give off then it will create a spectra of every X-ray energy that it was found, which then tells me what elements are part of that spectra that was found in that particle.
Okay. So you're actually viewing, you're viewing something, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, that looks kind of like a light show, but you're viewing it in the computer with the microscope. Is that what is giving you the results that you analyze, or are you looking at the light codes and making decisions, or is that something that the computer kind of spits out to you?
So the SEM part, or the scanning electron microscope portion of the instrument, is what creates the beam. And then the energy dispersive X-ray detector is the detector that determines and detects those X-ray energies I described. And that is all happening inside of the instrument and is in correspondence with the software that is used. And when it is running, it will show the spectra of those X-ray energies of those elements in that particle.
Okay. Now, the machine itself that you're using, is it calibrated?
I perform testing before I start any kind of analysis on casework. There are performance standards essentially that we run on the instrument to prove that it's working properly and ready to go for casework.
Okay, so the testing that how's the maintenance?
For the SEM portion, it undergoes every 6 months preventative maintenance. And for the detector, that energy dispersive X-ray detector, it gets checked and monitored once a year.
Okay. By you or about an outside agency?
By the outside company that we purchased them from.
Okay. And it's something that you have to keep records of?
Yes,
Okay, who's the custodian of records?
I am the consultant.
Okay, so the records that show that these instruments were calibrated, you bring those records with you?
For the preventative maintenance, those are not with me.
Pass with.
Nothing from the state,
All right, is this witness excused or subject to recall?
excuse.
Excuse.
All right. Rule has been invoked. What that means is you can't discuss your testimony with anyone. The only persons you're allowed to speak to are attorneys for the state or the defense. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to break at this point. And we're going to start on Monday at 1:30. I do have a docket in the morning, but we're going to cut that docket off at 12. So we'll be ready for you at 1:30. And the court reporter will have had a chance to take a break. All right, we can go off the record. So remember my instructions. You're not allowed to view anything. If you see anything in regards to this trial, you are to ignore it, turn it off. You're not allowed to start deliberating internally with yourself, with each other, or anyone else. I will let you know when it's time to begin your deliberations. Everything that you need to know about this case is to come from inside the courtroom. Does everyone understand? What I'm anticipating is Monday, we may end up going later. That's so that all the testimony can be concluded with, I believe, both sides. And then what I'm anticipating is Tuesday morning, you'll hear closing arguments. Does everyone understand? So that'll give somebody some idea of where I think the case will be at that point in time. So Monday, are you all okay with saying later so that all testimony can be concluded? All right, so if you'll make plans for that, that will be greatly appreciated. All right, everyone, please